Hello and welcome to our newborn photography safety series brought to you by StandInBaby. My name is Sandra Moffatt, and in an effort to make sure that we bring you all the information and facts relating to newborn safety, joining me throughout this series is well-respected neonatal nurse Anne-Marie Feary, who will be advising us on the essentials to safely working with newborns in a studio environment. In this tutorial, we're going to talk about safety issues with newborn photography. But before we start, I'd like to say that if you are unsure about anything you hear during this series, please seek advice from a medical practitioner near you and get the answers that you need. If you have been given information from other sources, make sure it's a reliable source because the health and well-being of our clients should always be put first. In this tutorial, we are going to do a walkthrough of the Froggy Pose. We will be covering two versions of this pose, demonstrating how it is achieved with and without the baby's legs extended forward towards the elbows. We will also be covering what to look out for, as well as what you need to avoid. Before we begin, I would like to advise everyone that this is an advanced pose, and as such, not every baby will be able to do it. If at any time your baby is showing cues that it is not 100% comfortable, for instance, it's wriggling or moving heaps, or even getting upset, please stop immediately. There are plenty of poses to fill your gallery, and missing out on this one is not going to impact your session. This is another pose where you are going to need a support person. And if this is going to be apparent, please make sure that you explain the entire process to them beforehand, so they know exactly what they are doing and what is expected of them. For those of you with a StandInBaby, this would be the perfect way to guide your parents through the process. Also keep in mind that mum has only recently delivered a baby and might not be up to the task of being the support person. This is also a great time to explain that it's a composite and you will be removing their hands in Photoshop, so there is no need to ever take their hands off the baby. The Froggy Pose is a very common pose around the world, and I'm going to be showing it to you. There's actually two ways that you can do this pose. I'm going to refer to it as the basic version of Froggy Pose, which I'm going to be showing you first, and then the more standard version that you see where the legs are extended forward. With the Froggy Pose, I actually generally, for transitioning, I will start from the hands under chin pose. I find it flows on very easily. Unlike the hands under chin pose, you will definitely need a spotter or a support person to help you achieve this image. It needs to be a composite or a version where you just edit out components to make it seem like they weren't there. It is never done by leaving the baby unsupported. So what I'm going to do to create this pose, remembering that there is a well in the bag and that I have underneath here a rolled up towel for support. Transitioning from the hands under chin pose, what I actually want to do, and I'm going to lift this up so you can see what I'm doing, is underneath here is a rolled up towel, and what I want to do is I just want to roll it under and get it underneath the baby's armpits, basically. Roll that towel under. You can do it two ways, either from above, but I actually like to do it by getting underneath. And what you're going to do is you're just going to roll it back just a little bit until the head of the baby starts to dip down. This way I know that the rolled up towel is underneath the armpits. The reason I want to do this is because there is going to be a lot more stability if the towel is here, coming up to the hands, coming up to the chin. Full support is coming through here rather than onto the elbows itself.
So I think the only other thing I can suggest here, Sandra, is that we watch the baby's airway again and just make sure that the chin doesn't come too far down on the chest. Is there much pressure?
Not at this stage, because in actual fact, it's coming over and getting support underneath here rather than the hands and onto the throat. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to want to tilt the baby's head a little bit off to one side, and that's really just going to create a little bit of room for me to gently pull out one of its hands, and I want to get it to sit just neatly on its cheek. Slight tilt to bring the hand out and up. And this is where I want to end up. I want to end up with my forefinger on the inside of its wrist and the other hand supporting its cheek, sort of through the jawbone there. And if you have unsettled the baby at this point, just sort of gently hold it there let it resettle. You don't need to start rocking or moving too much. Again, we're trying to, with as minimal movements as possible, achieve the look that we need. So once the baby is happy, just with its hands slightly resting on its cheek, what we're going to do is full support through the jaw, using your other hand just to support the side of its head. You're actually going to be bringing this elbow up and around and over the top of the rolled up towel. Hand on the side of the head, bring it up, around and up to this position. Again, the rolled up towel is coming underneath here. Again, if the baby is unsettled at all, just hold off. Don't rush into the pose, you can wait. Then you're going to bring up the second hand with a slight rock to the opposite side now, because I need to create slightly more room here than needed to get that elbow in and under. Slight rock to the opposite side, bring the hand in and under, and then bring back to the center. Now, there is photographers, or I've seen photos actually, where the baby's not being supported underneath the jaw. They've missed, and you can see that they've gone more for the cheek. And there's no support if the hands are coming up near the cheek. So you definitely do need to get both hands underneath the jawline. If during this process you missed and you did not get them underneath the jawline, just start the slight rock to either side to correct. So if one hand ended up here and you need to move it back down, all you're going to do, using this hand for support, rock the baby back that way and pull the hand back under and then move back to the center. Now, this is where our support person needs to come in. The two ways that this shot can be achieved is one, to do a composite where there's a hand supporting the head, and one where there's a hand supporting the hands, and then you pull both photos together in Photoshop. The second way to do this, if you understand Photoshop and know what you're doing, would be just to have a support hand supporting the head, and then you just edit out those elements later. So it can be, clone them out. It can be done either way. So if we were going to do it as a composite, hand would come in, lower towards the back. And the other thing I want you to be mindful of is if your baby is wearing a beanie at this stage for the look, the beanie could slip. And if your only support is via the hand here and the beanie slips off, you're actually going to be left with no support. So either hold down below the beanie so you're more supporting the head. So I'll just take that photo. Okay, and remember that if the support person is a parent, so you don't have a regular assistant and you've requested for a parent to come in and help you, you definitely need to guide them on where their hands should be and where they should be supporting. So Jamie, can you bring your hands in and then support just underneath the back side of their wrist and coming around to support underneath their chin. And now you can remove this hand from the back. And then I can put both of those photos together in Photoshop to create one image. Otherwise, the difficulty with creating two images and putting them together is ensuring that you've got the exact same angles to make that image work. So if you do understand cloning in Photoshop and you can do it efficiently, as I can, then just the hand behind, the first photo that you took, will definitely achieve that image very well as well.
I don't think I've got anything to say. I really like the fact that you use a support person. And again, just be mindful of the weight of the head. We've already mentioned this, but the baby's head weighs 25% of their total body weight in comparison to an adult, which is only 10%. So this head is really, really heavy, and we just need to not just protect the baby's head and their neck, but their airway as well.
Great. A variation of this shot, again, would be to rock the baby off to one side just to get one of the arms out. Bring it down, and actually, I don't want to leave a baby unattended, so I'm going to ask my support person to grab a teddy out for me. It can be any prop. In this case, again, I'm just using this little teddy. Now, you're never going to let go, so you need to support, and you need to have full support underneath the jawline there. You can, again, grab in a prop. And then, again, if you could support from behind. I can now get this photo as well. Okay. From here, you'll want to put the baby back down, resting, so that you can transition into your next pose. I actually like to transition into a side pose, and so I'm going to be demonstrating that in our next video. So that's actually how I do my standard froggy pose. I like it because the knees are in the exact same position as the hands under chin, and it transitions really well. I wanted to show the other froggy pose because one, I wanted to give Anne-Marie a chance to talk about it. I also wanted to show the way that you can achieve this safely if you are going to do it. One of the main differences is it is harder to transition into the more well-known froggy pose because I will need to pick the baby up, which means there is a greater chance that I am going to unsettle it. We actually need to get rid of the towel underneath. And instead we need to replace it with a couple of flat towels, and what this is going to do is it's just going to create support on the beanbag. So really preventing it from dipping down. We don't want to create a well at the front and force the legs to extend up even higher. Okay. So unlike the hand under chin pose where I can have the baby awake and settle it on the beanbag, you're actually going to need your baby to be quite sleepy prior to putting it down. To start, you're going to want to have your hands underneath the baby's chin in almost like a burping position. Then you're going to want to lift the baby up and support it here while it gets comfortable, because there is a good chance that it may have moved or unsettled during the process of picking up and putting it down to this position. Its legs may move around a little bit, and so just before, once it's settled, what you're going to need to do is just make sure that there is enough room between its legs to bring its body down into the position. Then you're going to, exactly the same as before, you're going to slightly rock to a side to bring one hand up and under, and then back to the other side to bring the other hand up and under. From here, you actually need to transition the baby down onto your shelf to get the photo from this sort of direction. And actually I feel like we don't have enough support there for our baby. So Jamie, can you just grab me a couple more towels? It is very easy to make slight adjustments.
So whilst we're doing that, Sandra, can I just discuss, with adult rib cages, our bones are calcified, and our rib cages when we breathe go in and out. Babies' rib cages, because they're not calcified, they actually only have the ability to go up. So you need to be very mindful. So when you were talking about the baby, holding the baby in the burp pose, I really like that, because what you can do is you can put the palm of your hand on the baby's chest and support the chin that way. But also when you bring in the baby forward into this froggy pose, that you're making sure that you've got enough support, that this baby with the little rib cage and breathing has got, you know, the ability to be able to breathe quite comfortably. And this is where you need to be watching your baby who are in these comfortable poses breathe, you know, their chest wall movements, and watch their breathing.
So maybe when the baby was sort of back this way, I can sort of assess whether or not it's breathing well.
Yes, and you need to, you know, right from the very beginning, you know, you need to be very mindful of the baby when you first meet the baby and follow its cues. And then if anything becomes abnormal, like the baby becomes lethargic or starts to breathe quite rapid, then you're aware straight away that you know, the baby's observations have changed or something has changed within that baby.
Absolutely. Okay, so what I needed to do was I actually needed to have a little bit more support here because the baby was drooping down a little bit too much. So to do that, I'm just going to grab a couple of extra face washes for support. I actually really like using towels and face washes because they're very easy to wash and keep clean, and so and they're actually really inexpensive. So I can have quite a few in my studio and wash them really easily. Okay, so again for this shot, it's definitely a composite. So again, Jamie, if you could bring your hand around towards the back. I'm just going to adjust one of the hands just a little bit. I'm going to sink the baby's bottom back just a little bit. Okay, I'm going to get that shot. Now again, I would create this shot by just editing out your hand, but for those that want to create a composite, if you could just bring your hand around and supporting the jawline as well, coming all the way up and around, yep, sort of just below her hands, and then you can remove this hand. And that's it.
So Sandra, can I just say that this looks like a really abnormal pose for a baby to be in. It's not one that sits naturally, and I think photographers need to be quite mindful again that they don't force babies into any unnatural poses. They also need to have a discussion with parents regarding their hips. If the baby have got hip dysplasia or if they're in a harness, absolutely under no circumstances do the harnesses come off. And that we just, you know, at any time, if the baby starts to fight those poses or it's difficult to get into them, I just think you need to forget it.
Absolutely. I definitely agree. This one is definitely more of a strain through the hips and the legs than the previous Froggy Pose. So I think once you're bringing the baby down sort of at this point, if you feel like the baby is not coming into the position very well, or is, I guess, squirming quite a lot, then you definitely want to rethink the pose. There is many poses you can do with a baby, and you definitely do not need to achieve every single pose with every single baby. So it is definitely okay to decide, you know what, this isn't the right pose for this baby, and to move on. So this is how I do both of my Froggy poses. Well, in actual fact, I mostly do the first one, and but for everybody else that does do the second version, that's how it's done safely. If you'd like to see more of our posing or hear about the safety aspects involved, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel.